Hello, anatomy students. We're now ready to review for our final module of the school year, which is over the lymphatic system. And so I do want to let you know this is only going to be a quiz, so there's going to be 20 multiple choice questions and a simple diagram. So I'm going to go over some questions with you now, and then I will show you guys again the diagram that will be on the quiz. And so let's start with number 1. The two main functions of the lymphatic system. The first function is to transport excess fluid away from interstitial spaces within the tissues. And remember, it also provides immunity against foreign particles. Number 2, lymph capillaries are microscopic closed-ended tubes that extend into interstitial spaces into tissues. We find them nearly everywhere that we find blood vessels, except for the central nervous system, CNS. And so remember that the microglia form the immune system in the CNS. So that's the only place you would not find the lymph capillaries is in the CNS. All right. Lymph vessels are similar to veins but thinner, and just like veins in the cardiovascular system, they also have flap-like valves that help prevent backflow, in this case of lymph fluid. And so eventually these lymph vessels will lead into the lymph nodes. The thoracic duct, one of the two major ducts of the lymphatic system, incorporates the lower limbs, the abdominal region, the left side of the body. The right lymphatic duct takes care of the right thorax, the arm, the head, and the neck. We also know that capillary blood pressure filters both water and small molecules from plasma, and the way that it draws it back is through osmotic pressure, so going from a high concentration back to a low concentration. All right. We have large amounts of lymphocytes and macrophages. The hilum is the indented region of the lymph node where blood vessels and nerves join together. Lymph nodules are functional units of the lymphatic node that contain both B cells and macrophages. Lymph sinuses, so much like your nasal sinuses, remember, are a network of chambers and channels through which the lymph fluid flows. Lymph itself is scrutinized by macrophages and lymphocytes, and then it's ready to mount an immune response. So again, think about the analogy at the airport with security. In order for you to get onto a plane, you have to go through security. The lymph is scrutinized by the macrophage and lymphocytes. These would be the security guards that prevent any foreign particles or invaders from getting in. All right, we're going to talk about two organs. We're going to talk about the thymus. The thymus is relatively large in childhood. It shrinks during puberty and is in fact very small in adults. And so the thymus's main purpose is to produce T cells. So remember, the T in T cells stands for thymus. The spleen contains lymphocytes and macrophages that help to filter blood. And so the spleen is sort of a specialized lymph node that instead of scrutinizing lymph, it's actually scrutinizing your blood. We have innate and adaptive immunity factors. The innate or nonspecific immunity factors include anatomic barriers, phagocytic barriers, physiological barriers, and inflammatory barriers. Your adaptive or specific immunity includes antigen specificity, diversity, immunological memory, and non-self recognition. An antigen induces the formation of antibodies because it's recognized as a threat. All right. Bone marrow produces B cells, and that's where the B comes from B cells is bone marrow. It will also produce pre-T cells that then become T cells in the thymus. So remember, B in B cell stands for bone marrow. The T in T cell stands for thymus. And so that's where that comes from. The major histocompatibility or MHC antigens help recognize that an antigen is foreign and not self. We have 4 different types of T cells. The first, my favorite, the killer T cell, destroys virus-infected cells. We have the helper T cell, which helps to activate the killer T cells, but also stimulate antigen production in the B cells. We have memory T cells, which persist in bloodstream to protect against future infections. So your body, if it sees another invader from before, it'll recognize it and be able to attack it faster. We also have suppressor T cells, which help protect healthy cells. We have 5 different types of antibodies. We have IgA, which protects against pathogens. They're in dimer shape, so dimer means 2. IgD is there to activate basophils and mast cells. IgE, for allergy sufferers like myself, we have an overproduction of IgE antibody, and therefore this is what's responsible for allergic reactions. IgG is very important, especially early in life. This is the antibody that can pass into the placenta, into the developing fetus, and so the mother does confer some of her antibodies to the baby in the form of IgG. And we also have IgM, which is responsible also for early stages of immunity, and it resembles that of a pentagon, which of course has 5 sides. The 2 different types of immune response, we have primary immune response. This is where plasma cells release IgM, then IgG into lymph for several weeks. It's followed up then by the secondary immune response. Both memory B and T cells will produce antibodies if an identical antigen is encountered later in life. So remember, the secondary immune response is much higher and therefore stronger than the primary immune response because it recognizes something that should not have been there before. And finally, to reduce rejection of transplanted tissues, immunosuppressive drugs are used. All right, and so we're also going to go ahead and show you then the figure that will be on the quiz. And so this figure shows you the different parts of the immune system. So we have our tonsils and adenoids, our thymus, our lymph nodes, appendix, bone marrow, lymph nodes and lymphatic vessels, spleen, pyres, patches, lymph nodes, lymphatic vessels. I will give you a picture that's identical to this. I will also, of course, give you a word bank so that you can just fill it in. And so again, if you go over the questions we just went over, look at the Kahoot I linked to you, look at this figure, and you guys should be well set then for the Module 13 quiz. And so with that, I'm going to wish you all good luck, and I hope to talk with you guys again soon. Thank you.